Sometimes I think about how one tiny choice can unravel everything you built, like a loose thread that starts small but ends up tearing the whole sweater apart. For me, that thread was letting Floyd move into our guest room. It seemed harmless at the time, just a favor for an old flame who'd fallen on hard times. But looking back, I see it was the moment I set fire in my own life. I'm 32 now, and I spent the last decade figuring out who I am and what I want. Back when I was younger, Floyd was a big part of that. My first real love, wild and unpredictable, like a storm you can't help but chase. We met in our early 20s, two reckless souls drawn to each other's chaos. He was all sharp edges and late-night promises, with a grin that could talk me into anything. Our relationship was a roller coaster, passionate one minute, screaming matches the next. It lasted 2 years before I walked away, exhausted by the drama, but still carrying a flicker of that old spark. Then came Douglas. He was the opposite of Floyd, steady, kind, the kind of man who'd bring you soup when you're sick and actually mean it when he says he'll call. We got married 3 years ago, and I thought I'd finally found my safe harbor. Life with Douglas wasn't fireworks, but it was warm and real, and I loved him for it. So when Floyd texted me out of the blue last spring, I should have ignored it. Hey, AUD, I'm in a bind, got evicted, nowhere to go. Can we talk? I stare at my phone, a mix of curiosity and pity tugging at me. He sounded desperate, and I remembered the good times, how he'd made me laugh, how alive I'd felt with him. Against my better judgment, I called him back. He spilled his sob story. Lost his job, couldn't pay rent, sleeping on a friend's couch until that ran out too. I just need a couple weeks to get back on my feet, he said, voice low and familiar. Please, AUD. I told myself it was nothing, just helping an old friend. But when I brought it up to Douglas, his face tightened. I don't like it, he said, arms crossed. He's your ex. It's weird. I brush him off, leaning on guilt and compassion like weapons. He's got no one else. Doug, would you really let him end up on the street? After a long, tense argument, Douglas relented, though I could tell he wasn't happy. I promised it'd only be temporary. I should have listened to him. Floyd moved in with a duffel bag and that same old grin, and at first it felt fine, awkward, sure, but manageable. Douglas kept his distance, polite but cool, while I played host, making sure Floyd had towels and coffee. But then things shifted. Floyd and I started talking more, late-night chats in the kitchen over cheap wine, reminiscing about the past. He'd lean close, eyes locked on mine, and I'd feel that pull again, the one I thought I'd buried. We watched movies together, our shoulders brushing on the couch, or cooked dinner side by side, laughing at dumb inside jokes Douglas didn't get. I told myself it was innocent, just two friends reconnecting, but deep down, I knew I was crossing lines. The more time we spent together, the blurrier those lines got. Douglas saw it too. He'd come home from work and find us giggling over something, and his jaw would clench. You're different lately, he said one night, voice quiet but sharp. What's going on with you too? I turned it back on him, twisting the knife. You're being paranoid. He's just a friend. Why can't you trust me? I watched doubt creep into his eyes, and instead of owning up, I doubled down, making him feel small for questioning me. It worked. He backed off, but I could see the hurt I was planning, and I ignored it anyway. Then came the money. Floyd started talking about moving out, saying he found a cheap apartment but needed a security deposit. I'll pay you back, I swear, he said, all earnest and pleading. I didn't even hesitate. I grabbed Douglas's credit card from the dresser and handed over $500, telling myself it was no big deal. When Douglas noticed the charge, he was furious. You didn't even ask me, he snapped. That's our money, Audrey. I waved it off, acting like he was overreacting. It's to get him out of here faster. Isn't that what you want? But the truth was, I wasn't sure I wanted Floyd gone anymore. I was hooked on the thrill of him, the way he made me feel seen in a way Douglas never did. Or maybe I just stopped letting him. Things escalated fast after that. One night, Douglas was at a late meeting, and Floyd and I were alone. The wine flowed, the air thickened, and before I knew it, we were kissing, desperate, messy, like no time had passed. It didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, stolen moments turned into a full-blown affair. Secret touches in the hallway, hushed promises in the dark. I'd lie next to Douglas at night, guilt gnawing at me, but the next day I'd fall right back into Floyd's arms. I told myself it was real, that maybe this was what I'd been missing all along. I was so deep in my own delusion, I didn't see the crash coming. It happened on a Tuesday. Douglas came home early, unannounced, and walked into the living room just as Floyd and I were tangled up on the couch, half-dressed and oblivious. The look on his face, shock, then betrayal, then a cold, hard resolve. I'll never forget it. "Get out," he said, voice like steel. "Both of you." Floyd scrambled for his stuff, muttering apologies, but I just stood there frozen as my marriage collapsed around me. Douglas didn't yell or beg. He just pointed to the door. I packed a bag and left, tears streaming, knowing I'd ruined everything. The aftermath was brutal. Floyd crashed with me at a motel for a couple nights, but then he started pulling away. Flirty texts to someone new, excuses about needing space. Within a month, he was gone, chasing his next conquest, leaving me alone in a dingy apartment with nothing but regret. Douglas filed for divorce, and I didn't fight it. How could I? I'd thrown away a man who loved me for a fantasy that never even wanted me back. Word got around. Friends picked sides, and most chose Douglas. I couldn't blame them. He moved on, started dating someone new, and last I heard, he's happy, thriving, even. Me? I'm still picking up the pieces. A year later, I sit in my quiet place, staring at the walls, and I still struggle to own it fully. I want to blame Floyd or fate or anything but myself, but I know the truth. I did this. I had something good, steady, warm, real, and I traded it for a fleeting high. Floyd was a mirage, a shiny lie I chased because I didn't see the value of what I already held. Now, I'm left with this hollow ache, this lingering loss, and the bitter realization that I'll never get back what I broke. Douglas was my safe harbor, and I sailed straight into the storm.